I'd like to welcome the Minister to her new role and also welcome back the Deputy Minister to his. One of the policy areas of your department is the staging of major events. I was interested to hear the answers that you gave in response to the question one from Mandy Jones and the supplementaries. And, of course, Mandy was perfectly correct in her point that although it's very good to have events coming to Cardiff, there's also a need to spread events across Wales in general and also to include North Wales. So I was also interested to hear your response to Hreen's inquiries about the island games that are projected for Ynys Môn. Clearly, there's going to be a lot of members coming to you pitching for these kind of events. Now, one major event that that was discussed previously in this Assembly term was a future Commonwealth Games bid coming from Wales, which was something that Ken Skates was very keen on when he had the portfolio for major events. Now, I appreciate what the Minister, what you said earlier about certain events are city-based, and indeed the Commonwealth Games is one such event. But I think Ken Skates did have the idea that certain parts of the bid could be put to different parts of Wales. It wouldn't necessarily be totally focused on one city. And, of course, I'm not stating which city should be at the heart of such a bid. But have you looked at a future Commonwealth Games bid, and is that something that has crossed your desk thus far?
So, as it happens, I did have a briefing on the situation in relation to major events this morning. This was not one of the issues that arose in that context. I think what's important for me is that we have an overview of not just what's going on where, when, but that we can map it out on a year-by-year basis so that we have an understanding that if we support one particular major project one year, it may be that we don't have so much for the next year. But if there's a really big project that we see coming down the track, we may want to hold back. So it's getting an overview, for me, is quite important. The Commonwealth Games is not one of those big events, major events, that is on our agenda at the moment. We've, of course, had the very successful Volvo Ocean Race last year, which I think really put the Year of the Sea on the map. And I think that the fact that we have, yes, last year, 22 cultural and sporting events across the whole of Wales, attracting over a $250,000 visitors to Wales, really bringing in about £72 million worth of money. These are all really successful stories, I think. But of course, when you host such a huge event as the Commonwealth Games, you also have to look at the cost implications for us as a government.
Yes, I think that's sensible, because you can sometimes get claims about these events leading to massive infrastructure and massive sporting participation later on. We had these sort of hyperbolic claims about the London Olympics in 2012, and they don't always actually lead to those outcomes. So certainly we would be wise to look at these things carefully. To look at another possible event, if you can comment on the specifics of this one, we did have the very successful Champions League football final coming to Cardiff. That's one that, of course, is focused on a question that is focusing on Cardiff. That was in 2017. Now, that was a good event and was an example of good lobbying, but we did notably miss out on having any part in co-hosting the future European Football Championships in 2020. There is a possibility that Wales could co-host the future European Championships, as increasingly UEFA are minded to have more than one nation actually hosting an event. By nation, they define that as an area that has their own football association. So theoretically, Wales could co-host the future European Championships with the other home nations. Is that something that you would be minded to have a look at?
I think the fact that 160 million people tuned into the Champions League final really meant that Cardiff in particular was put on the map. in a way that we perhaps haven't seen before. So football is an international language unlike any other, I think, and I think the tragic events that we've seen last week for Cardiff City is also an example where the kind of focus that we've seen on Cardiff that we didn't particularly want means that this international language is something that everybody's focused on. There will be, I think, opportunities for us to cooperate with other parts of the United Kingdom to look at future football events, and of course the bigger the better as far as we're concerned. So we will look at co-hosting some events of that scale and nature in the future.
Thanks for clarifying that point, and I look forward to future announcements. Now, there's been some talk in recent years of a major conference centre being built in Cardiff. Whether there's enough demand for this when there is already one being built in Newport, I don't know. There may be a danger of oversupply, and of course we have to be wary of white elephants sometimes being constructed. On the other hand, there may be a belief within the events management sector that there's enough demand for both conference centres. I don't know if you have any view on that, Minister.
Well, I did have a very constructive meeting with the International Convention Centre responsibility authorities last week with the Celtic Manor. And I think there's great excitement about what that really could do for Wales and for bringing people to Wales. One of the issues we discussed there with other leaders of local authorities was the need to perhaps look at developing a convention bureau for the whole of the Cardiff capital region. So the very clear impression that they gave us was that the International Convention Centre itself and the Celtic Manor would not be big enough in itself to host the numbers of people that they're expecting to come. So there are opportunities for Cardiff, for Newport, in terms of hosting hotel rooms, and there's a real excitement, I think, building around that. And I must make it clear that I hope that that International Convention Centre will be a part of the international strategy that I will be developing in the next few months.
Question 3.